This is Isa Kyutan welcoming you to another Asian Agribiz podcast. Group sow housing is gaining ground in Asia where animal welfare is increasingly relevant. The concept means a housing environment for a group of sows that allows them to lie down, stand up, and move around during pregnancy as opposed to being cooped in crates. In this podcast, my colleague Hatu and Mikael Kirk, CEO of Agrisis, a supplier of swine farm equipment from Denmark, discuss how group sow housing outperform crate systems and how swine producers can implement this system to address animal welfare, improve their image, and optimize their investments.
Hello, Mikael. Thank you for talking to us in our podcast.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me to this podcast.
So today we'll be talking about group cell housing. I think the concept has been introduced in Asia for a while, but I have not seen many farms or company apply them. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
From NEDAP Pig Division, they have actually been active in Asia for many years and started with a pilot project already back in 1993 and having a constant flow the last 15 years. And we as a partner, we did our first 8,000 sow project with group housing, electronic sow feeding, and more automation feeding system in Asia, China in 16 with great success. And this is actually a reference farm up to today still. And in total, if we should come with a guess from our knowledge and network, we would say around 2,000 farms in Asia in total have group housing with electronic sow feeding. And several large-scale integrators have done many projects and are going more and more to this and renovating old farm with group housing, electronic sow feeding, like Bedarco, CP, and just now coming Nipponham in Japan, which will start group housing as standard. And that trend is something they announced that they will change to group housing overall. So yes, we see a growing trend for this.
Well, you mentioned all the big names. What about the smaller producers? I think they're not ready yet. And one of the big reasons, from what I've heard, is the cost. Producers say that when we remove the crate, changing practices that has been built over generations, it will lead to higher prices for meat. What's your take on this?
I would say today the cost has actually reversed with group housing in gestation. The total investment with an electronic sow feeding system is actually less with ESF, electronic sow feeding. The feed supply system is much simpler, and one feed station is replacing 20-60 boxes depending on the model chosen. But the supply system is just filling a few places instead of having dosing units in many numbers. And looking over the longer run, it is very beneficial with the ESF individual feeding, since this will save feed and get more fit sows. And again, that leads to better productive sows.
Okay, so you mean the group housing system with the inclusion of an automatic feeding will help farms reduce feed waste, disease risk, especially ASF, and therefore being more efficient, right? So what about the other components of a group housing system?
It's actually fairly few components, and the setup is quite simple. A controller connected to the number of the needed feed stations, and then a supply feeding system. Then you need the ear tags for the gills and the sows, and then you're up and running.
Right. So we need an electronic feeder and ear tags which have identified the cells and how much feed she needs for her specific growing stage, right? Does this system apply for the entire lifespan of the cell or just in some period? Which periods then?
Yes, with period, it's actually quite easy. The earlier it has only been possible to have it in gestation in the period, but over the last 5 to 7 years, individual and automized feeding have expanded also to the farrowing and the mating. The opportunities is expanding, and due to higher feed costs, it gets more and more relevant because this is beneficial for the farmer's feed cost and saving feed, keeping the overview. The way with individual feeding is handling actually possible to handle over the complete cycle. And the newest possibilities is also feeding according to automized collected weight. So you can automate weighing together with the group housing and then adjust automatically the feed curve.
You mean now we can do the group housing for the entire life cycle of the cells, right? From the gestation, farrowing, and mating periods. But I'm curious, how to socialize the cells during these different stages? Do we need to learn how and where to position them so that they are less stressful? For example, I've learned that when we introduce newly bred females with late term cells, the senior cells are more concerned about their own well being, so they rather pick fights with the newcomers. Does that what happen normally? And what do you do in that case?
That's a very good question and a very crucial point. You're absolutely right that if the circumstances isn't in order, this will not work without fights among the animals. But a few steps, the right layout, and of course the right equipment, you will have a simple, secure, and production safe solution.
Well, that sounds easy, but to me it's not. Could you please elaborate on that? What are the steps and what are the right layout?
Yes, my experience is definitely that it will influence the sound performance in a very good way. Um, of course, all the basic things should be in place, and then our experience is that you can have better production results with electronic sow feeding system than with any other solution.
And what can we get out from that?
Feed right, you will have better and fit sows, and again, they will reward you with better productivity and live-strong piglets. And your feed cost, yes, they will be even lower, which is not only good for the economy, but in these years where we also need to focus on the environment, it's also very good for the environment.
What farm owners and workers need to learn to run the system? Do they need special training on how to take care of the system and the cells?
Yes, no matter which system people choose for, there's always a need of kind of training and new routines. And obviously, the farm manager need to understand the system. And then the section or team leader taking care of the daily routines should be able to run the system. And depending on the setup, if it's an independent farm or an integrator, it can be beneficial for an owner or production director to understand the system, but that is more from a benchmarking point of view.
I've seen some big producers in Vietnam already invested in group housing as an animal welfare factor in their pig business. So, do you think this would be a trend in the future? What would be the main driving factor for that trend?
Oh, very nice that you have also seen from such significant producers in Vietnam. And what we see is also that group housing is being the new standard of many good reasons, as I also mentioned earlier, but definitely also from a consumer perspective. The group housing and animal welfare approach is the way forward. And we, as a Danish-based company, we have worked with group housing and electronic sow feeding for the last 20 years. And I would say it has been standard for the last 15 at least. And even in Spain, where we have a subsidiary, we see that this is the same trend. And Spain, I need to notice that this is the largest pig producing country in Europe. So the trend is the same also here.
Well, that's that. Thank you very much for your sharing. I hope our audience will have some ideas on how to liberate their cells. We hope to hear more from you soon, Mikkel.
Yes, you're of course welcome. I hope this gave some good insights to you and to your listeners. Thank you for having me here.
We hope that you've picked up some valuable information from today's podcast. Thank you for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more on Asia's animal protein industries, please visit www.asian-agribiz.com.